So my name is Alison Evans, and I am a relatively new board member of ACET. Well, the first thing to say is I think, I'm kind of learning all the time, and I think that's one big motivator actually behind my entire career, which is really being open and curious to learning. So there are many things all the way through my career when I think I've been learning a lot. But I guess one of the things that I've been struck by recently is, despite really quite difficult global conditions, despite shifting sands in and around not just the international development agenda, but just for all countries and economies right now, when you kind of look down and you look down what's happening at a community level, a neighborhood level, a place level, there's an incredible buzz and dynamism and resilience, actually. So one of the things I've learned, and I sit on a couple of boards where I think this is particularly noticeable, that even though they've been very aware of these really quite drastic shifts in global conditions, actually, when you look down, there's incredible dynamism, innovation, resilience that has persisted, and that's really encouraging. So it's quite a sort of macro learning point, but it's one that really sustains me in my interest and my commitment. So I do listen to podcasts, and there are a few that are hosted out of the UK. One called The News Agents, which I always go to when I need a little bit of a buzz and a bit of an injection of current affairs. Another that I do listen to, which is a sort of longer form podcast. But in terms of thinkers, actually, I'm a big consumer of the kind of wisdom of a sort of number of key journalists and so on. So I always go to the Financial Times whenever I need a real bit of insight and sort of dispassionate reporting. David Pilling is I'm a big fan of his writing, and there are a couple of other journalists in the Financial Times who I follow. So there are definitely touchstones out there, but I'm a big kind of quite eclectic consumer. That's always been my way, really. I'm a huge sort of fan, and I hope through my career I've always been a big supporter of the notion of peer learning, because I've seen it in action, and I've really seen it being very brilliantly done. I mean, you have to be very intentional about it. You have to create good conditions for it to work well. So there's instances of sort of sloppy peer learning which are never going to help anyone. But I think, just thinking a little bit about, Africa transformation, the mission, peer learning, for my money, is a vital ingredient of that. You've got 54 countries in Africa. There is a wealth of experience out there, be it expert sort of driven, be it practitioner driven. We've got to find better ways of bringing that together in a sort of structured way that not only sort of shares insight, if you like, and evidence, but is really focused on solving problems. And I think there's nothing better, actually, than peer learning. It's experientially based very often. It's contextually relevant. It's about people who have been there, who can share their experience and knowledge. It's about those who are yet to be there, consuming and hearing it in a contextually relevant, institutionally appropriate way. So I just think when it works well, it's absolute magic, and is a fundamental ingredient for driving more transformative thinking and practice. It can be very hands-on, which in itself is just, cuts through so much of the noise often that You don't want to be making the same mistakes each time. Sometimes just a little bit of a pep talk from someone who's been there can just give you the opportunity to bypass a few obvious mistakes and really take the benefit of others' experience to sort of speed up your own thinking, but also your own practice. So I think we just break that down a bit because there's kind of a lot in there, and I think peer learning is a potentially really effective tool. You're kind of walking the talk in your peer learning. I mean, learning and building that learning muscle is a really important part of the bigger transformation agenda, in my view, because without it, we are bound to sort of repeat the mistakes of the past and really find ourselves bogged down as a result. But then it has to kind of key into systems that then take that, amplify that, and turn that into agendas for change. And it's that connectivity between what ACET can do in terms of convening and matchmaking almost, to bring that peer learning together that is problem-focused, that is practical, but it has to dock into something. And what you want to dock into it is the systems of evaluation, learning, evidence use that then really support the process of policy design, implementation, and ultimately delivery. So and accountability for results. So I think it's really important not to see peer learning as an island. It really has to be part of this understanding of these wider systems, and I think that's ACET's sweet spot in a way. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that while context matters hugely, and one would want peer learning to be very contextually relevant, culturally relevant, at the same time there are some foundational principles that cut across. And those are the principles of objectivity, independence, relevance, credibility, and so forth. And they cut across, and those are the kinds of standards that one would want to see implemented everywhere. And again, ACET as a Pan-African player that keys into sort of global discourse around standards for evaluation, learning, accountability, can be a transmitter of some of those standards as it thinks about that connection between peer learning and systems for evaluation, learning, policymaking, delivery, and the rest. I've had a 30-plus year career, of which issues relating to women's economic participation, empowerment, the whole broader gender equality debate have been a real keynote all the way through. And I, to some extent, can't quite believe we're still having to say more or less the same things here. At the same time, I think there are areas of progress, and we need to absolutely capitalize on, which goes back to our, peer learning point, sharing knowledge, transferring knowledge across the 54 countries of Africa to say, where have we broken through? Even if it's at the small level, where have we done this well? But within the kind of evaluation learning space, I think, we know what we need to do. But the fact is that the reality of getting this embedded in the mindsets, the behaviors, the ways of working, the priorities of national, local governments and their systems of policy making, decision making, it's budgeting, it just continues to be an uphill struggle. It's about power, it's about lack of visibility. Now, ACET has done a great job, I think, in both in creating and pulling together some really fantastic data, in communicating that in a way that has the real potential to inspire the need for change, but we've got to follow through, and that's got to land somewhere. So I think that's where we're in the territory of building coalitions, of finding ways to sort of build on reform processes that are promising, sharing that experience. Data is never going to be sufficient. It's vital, necessary, but it's never going to do the job for us. And what we have to see there is really getting these issues at the core of what it means to do, policy making that matters for all. And that has to be supported by evidence that brings those issues to light, and then the ability to translate that, be through upstream policy advice or downstream evaluation, to those who have the opportunity to take that forward. But it has to be supported by coalitions, inside and outside of government, private sector, public sector, non-profit, and the rest, civil society. So we really have to think more in terms of who's in the room, have we got the right people in the room, and can we use the evidence we have to really motivate action? And I think ACET is really well placed to help support some of that. It can't do it alone, it has to do it in partnership, but I think it has a real opportunity. I think my aspiration is to offer up whatever I have in terms of a 30-year career as nuggets, I hope, of support and advice and inspiration, but ultimately to be able to support ACET in really becoming the kind of Pan-African institution that is really leading the way, championing, being seen as the champion of the Africa transformation agenda. It's on that path. It will be a privilege to be involved in that journey, and whatever I can bring at whatever level to try and encourage and coach that through, then that's what I hope for. Open, curious, empathetic.